Hey everybody, welcome back. And if you're new, thanks for stopping by. So, the inevitable has happened, and I'm having a problem with my drone. Which, let me show you real quick what that is. Just gonna pop it on here. I should put a battery in first. So let me grab one here, shove it in, turn it on, turn my controller on, resync it real quick, and start the motors here. So if you notice, only 3 of 4 of the props are actually spinning. Which, that's going to be an issue if you ask me. So, let me power it down. And before I go through the disassembly of this, we'll pop out the battery. And I'm just going to pop off the camera now. So, this is the bad one, obviously. And if you look, when you manually spin them, they spin a little bit. And they slow down pretty fairly. Now, if I spin this one, it pretty much just stops. So, this might be my fault because I bought 3 spare batteries. So you see 4 here and a charger. So, technically, I have 5 batteries. And I think what happened is I was flying for a bit too long and burned up this motor. I've actually already taken this apart, took the motor apart, and some of the brushes were looking a bit shabby on that motor, and it did have some burn marks on it. So, on top of that, looking at the motor mount, it actually had warped when it fell out of the sky and crashed into the ground because it was so hot, it moved it. So, I first attempted to use some needle nose pliers to warp that back into shape. Now it spins, but the reason it's slowing down is because the motor is pretty much fried. It still turns on, but it's not giving out enough power to actually spin that motor up enough to fly it. But I did buy some spare motors, I should say. And what we're going to do today is actually take this all apart again and solder in a new motor. So in order to get this apart, firstly, you're going to need to remove all the props. You might be able to get away with not removing them, but from what I've experienced, I only removed this one just to get the motor and stuff out. It'd be a lot easier just to pull them all out. That way, everything comes apart. So, of course, you're going to need to take off all the props. They have 1 screw on them each, and then you have 4 on the sides here. So, I'm going to pull off all the prop motors. You might see me using a pair of tweezers to push on the back side. That's just because sometimes these don't fully unscrew, and this just gives it a little push through the hole there on the back side, and can get them out easier because they don't really screw in, they more just hold it in place. But let me pull out the battery here because definitely don't want to have that when I'm working on this. We'll get the screwdriver that came with the drone, so it's actually much easier to use this. And yeah, let me pull off all the props, and then I'll flip it over and show you what you need to remove on the backside. One thing I want to mention, there's a little metal ring here, little washer. Don't lose that. Make sure when you're setting stuff aside to watch carefully, and don't lose your prop top pieces there. Alright, so now that I have those off, I've already unscrewed these. I'm going to go ahead and pull the shells off here. They can be a little finicky. I actually got the prop off. This is the bad one here, because it's on the front side. So that one also came out with the prop there. I'm just going to place them in a nice little pattern over here so I don't forget which one's which. I don't think it matters, but I'd rather have the gears in the right place. Oh, that one went under my car. So let me flip it over. Just gonna take our camera off, set that aside, take our landing legs off. Probably should move these off my soldering pad, but I'm not gonna be using that. Now, on the back side here, there are 22 screws, and I'm going to pause here and highlight them all. Alright, so once you have all the screws removed, it's as simple as snapping it. You may have to pinch the body a little bit on the arms to get it to start, and shell comes right off. So here's the interior, what it looks like. Don't be frightened. Again, the front side would be this guy right here, because the battery goes in the back. So this is our bad one. I can tell you just by spinning it, and just for reference I can look at the shell here just to know which way they spin. So the motors actually will spin opposite of the way that the props do, or yeah. And that's just because when you put on your little gear, if I can get it in there, it goes the opposite way. And I can tell that's the one that's broken because if I go on this side, you see how well it spins. So let me put that back over here. And what I'll need to do is remove this part of the battery casing because we need to get all the way down in here to the motherboard so I can desolder and resolder a new motor. Now that those are popped out, I can go ahead and get this all separated. So, bad motor again is this one right here. And you can see once these are snapped in, you might need to give it a little love underneath so it pops out there. Alright. And you can tell this is the bad motor because I pulled it apart already. And you can see on the bottom, well, not really. The brushes are a bit burnt. Some of them are partially missing. So I need to push that out the bottom there, pull it out. We'll set it aside and then trace our wires back over to the motor here. So we got blue and red wire there. I think I can pop this plastic piece off, but I'm going to take the risk and just solder it while it's on here. So let me flip these around. So blue's on the left, red's on the right. So next, get our soldering iron. Like I said, I'm just going to solder it here. But before we do that, let's get out the new motors and make sure they are the correct size. So set this aside real quick. And let me open up the new motors here. Get my handy dandy. Looks like they just placed them inside this bag. They're all the way down here, but I'm just going to slice it open here. And let me get into the actual bag. There we go. And they're on the other side, aren't they? Perfect. So my slice through the bag didn't get me all the way in. We'll just go all the way through it. Alright, there we go. Oh, they're not just placed in there, but they are just sort of placed in there. So they do have corresponding wire colors, so that makes it a lot easier. There's nothing else in there, so I can just chunk that. So here's our spare motors. We're only going to need one, so I'm just going to set the other aside. We'll open this up to make sure these are correct. And they're magnetized together. So we need the blue and red one. Throw the black one back in there because I might need it in the future. And get our other motor out just to make sure it's the correct size. And they are. So perfect. Now comes the part of soldering them. Well, my phone did cut off there, But the good news is I let it cool down and the soldering iron is ready to go. So we're just going to go ahead and make sure the solder will melt here. We are good to go. And be very, very careful with this so I don't hit the plastic or else we're going to have a bad time. So there we are. I need to suck that out a little bit. So let me get my solder sucker here. Don't need so much solder on this. Sorry if my head's getting in the way. I'm just trying to do this without screwing up too much. Alright, got that. Get a little solder, new solder on here. And then we'll get our wires in. So let me turn this around. Sorry if my head's in the way. I'm trying to do this without my head being in the way, but it's easier to see when it's in the way probably. So solder is ready. Get our wire in there if I can. Alright, wire 1. And the red wire. I need to straighten it out a bit so it goes in a little better. There we go. Again, don't touch the plastic. Don't be lazy and pull off the board, but me, I'm lazy. So there we go. Both our wires are in. So now I'm gonna go ahead, put the soldering iron off to the side. We also need to make sure I get all my screws out of here. Alright, there we go. I still don't think that's going to affect anything. If it does, well, that's just one of the screws that goes in from the foot there. Which honestly, I don't know what that screws into looking at the top because there isn't a screw hole there. So, if it's messed up, we'll just go with one less screw. So let me get these screws out the way. And we'll place this back down here. Move our motor wires into the channels. Alright, so it's back in position there. Now, I just need to make sure this is in position. Get my screwdriver. And the screws that stayed there should be able to just screw right back in. I'm going to go ahead and get all the screws put back in. Once I get the cover put back on here, I'm going to plug in the battery and just make sure this spins up the right way. And we'll be good to put it all back together. So let me get these screws. I'll be back with you. Alright, now that I got those back in there, I'm going to stick this in the motor mount. Just pops right back in. There's no screws or anything. Make sure these are kind of down in the channels. And then pop it on like so. Alright, so let me get a battery in here. My phone's probably going to quit here in a second, but hopefully not. Get a battery in there. Turn it on. And we're just going to make sure they all start up. And I saw it moving. Cool. It is working. So let me get our handy dandy guy here. And since I had to remold this basically, I'm going to make sure it spins the correct way. So I don't feel any resistance, so hopefully what I did helps with the motor mount. It's not spinning all the way, but we'll find out when I put it all back together and it doesn't work. Or it works, so let me get this all put back together. I believe these go on the top side of this, so actually they do go on the top side, so got it in the correct orientation. Just gonna pull the battery back out so don't have any issues there. Get our props through, and then check all the wires to make sure I'm not pinching any, because that could be a problem if I do. It's good there. Good there. And last one here. So clip them all together. Feel like this side's not clipping all the way. Maybe I have a wire in the way. Let's double check. Those are all down. These ones, I have a wire trying to get itself pinched. So I'm just going to push on these with those tweezers. So my phone really doesn't like the temperatures out here, but what I was doing is getting everything put back together. So we need B on this arm because it's our motor side. And what I did in the off time is I just kind of tucked the wires down, kind of manipulated them a little bit so they wouldn't get in the way when I'm trying to reinstall everything. So this is pretty simple. These all should just snap right back in, as long as the wires don't move around. And I feel like I'm missing a piece here. What am I missing? I have it on backwards. Ha! I'm stupid. Anyway, let's put it on the correct way. So get all our props through. Now we can snap it together properly. And get that one in there. And snap everything together. Alright, so next up, I'm going ahead and I'm going to put back on all the screws on the bottom, and I'll return. It's 22 screws, so this is going to go really fast. And just looking here, you can see these all spin much better. Well, at least that one does, because this is the bad one. So let me pop a battery in, turn it on, turn the controller on, and then we'll just run a quick test here. Oh yeah, gotta resync it. All right, and they're all spinning. That one does seem to slow down a little bit, but I think the real test is get it out in the air, see how it flies, and then, yeah, we'll see if that worked or not with my little bit of a manipulation fix. As you can see, it is definitely flying again, was able to take off on its own power, and I even tried 360 flips off camera, and were no problems there either. I did have to adjust the trim to get it to hover in place and fly straight again, but other than that, I was able to enjoy it again. However, as you might hear, one of the motors is a bit loud and grindy sounding, so I think the other B motor is on its way out after some test. I also plan to replace the warp motor I temporarily fixed, so when those finally arrive from China, I'll get those both fixed at the same time and should be back to 100%. However, that is all for this video today. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future videos, leave them below and I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as possible. Also, if you can click that like and subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it as it helps me out. I thank you all for stopping by today. Hope you have a great rest of your day and take care.